Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk about what it is I announced today, which is that I will be taking the formal step of intervening in the SEC case that will be the review of the NextEra and Dominion potential merger. Certainly, as we have seen in the filed paperwork, NextEra has filed to purchase Dominion for $67 billion. And as this process is going through the SEC review, I believe it is extraordinarily important to be a party to the case, to intervene in this case. And so I can have a voice on behalf of Virginians, asking questions, ensuring that I'm getting answers, and importantly, putting forth priorities that I know to be important for the people of Virginia. As I laid out in the op-ed that ran today, those priorities really fall into three primary categories. One is, of course, addressing issues of affordability across Virginia. I have heard nonstop for a couple years now about the impact that it is to open your electric bill and know that once again, you continue to see prices go up. So ensuring that if this merger application is to be approved, ensuring that there is substantial ongoing financial benefit in terms of the affordability of Virginians' electric bills. Second priority, of course, exists related to the jobs that are so vital to Virginia, to our economy, and importantly to the families who rely on the good paying jobs that for many people they have enjoyed for years and years. That's everyone from a line worker anywhere across Virginia to the folks who work in the Dominion headquarters in Richmond. And then thirdly, a priority is to ensure that any potential merger really keeps efforts underway as it relates to our renewable clean energy future, where as we move towards the future, we need homegrown, local, reliable, clean energy, and ensuring that if this merger is to go through, that continues to be a priority. Certainly, Virginia's home to the largest offshore wind development that we are seeing on the East Coast. That's a point of pride for many Virginians, and any company that might be inclined towards buying Dominion Energy would have to ensure that they also prioritize extraordinary investments, but extraordinary projects like that one. And so the process over the coming months will be that I will file the documentation to formally intervene, and then I will begin filing questions, priorities, and all of the documentation that will be reviewed as a part of this case. So I look forward to your questions, and again, thank you for being here.
Alrighty, and just a reminder, folks, if folks could raise their hands if you have a question. Let's go to NBC 12 first.
Governor, thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate your time. Talk to me. I mean, you said this morning in your op-ed you're skeptical of the deal here. What made the decision for you to jump in sort of now and make your voice heard?
Well, so, there was the initial announcement that this was going to occur, that NextEra was going to make this application before the SEC. Then ultimately, of course, last month, they actually filed their application. And in reviewing it and in hearing from Virginians, importantly, I realized that there are questions after questions that I, as a Virginian, not even with the sort of lens of being the governor of our Commonwealth, but as a Virginian, I have many, many questions about what does it mean for these two enormous companies, one, of course, Virginia-based and one Florida-based to merge. And what does that mean for Virginia? And so in looking at what are all the avenues of action that I as governor can take to act on these concerns or to act on this skepticism and to get answers to the questions that I believe are extraordinarily important as we go through this process, that the process of intervening is an important one to take. Of course, there's kind of other options such as comments, which I've notably done on other SEC cases. But the action of actually formally intervening, it is an unprecedented one. As a governor, I do acknowledge that. But frankly, the size and scope of this merger application is also unprecedented. And so to be able to have a seat at the table, access to the questions that others are asking, access to the answers, and all of the documents filed in this case is an important priority. And that's why I'm taking the action of intervening.
Fox 5, DC.
Hi, Governor Tom Fitzgerald. Thanks for taking our questions.
Thank you.
So this is unprecedented, so I'm not going to act like I know how this works. What does your action mean? What will you do? Do you take this out of the other body's hands, and is it up to you to decide? And also, how much do the concerns about people's power bills and data centers factor into your actions here?
The very quick answer to the first question is no. I am not taking anything out of the hands of the SEC. The decision to approve or deny or potentially put a whole new set of parameters in place, or offer a whole new set of parameters of a potential deal to Dominion-NextEra, that authority still lies with the SEC. The act of intervening is a legal action that I will be taking as governor, and other entities or individuals may also choose to take that action separately and apart from mine. But in the process of intervening, I will become a party to this case. And that means that I will be able to raise specific concerns, put forth specific questions that will have to be answered by NextEra and Dominion, and be part of what it is that the SEC reviews as they are making their decision. And so for me, the priority is to be able to build upon the work that I have been doing as it relates to energy affordability, certainly in addition to the bills that I signed into law, in addition to the positive movements forward that we made with creating the first of its kind tax on data center consumption, energy consumption, in addition to just this past week, the FCC, this past week, the SEC ruled on the transmission cost allocations. And that's a circumstance where the case was before the SEC about how to allocate costs. And I'm getting into the weeds on this one, Tom, sorry, but there was a case before the SEC about how to allocate transmission costs. And so that's, the transmission lines that are put in place. And I filed comments in those cases with a specific request that the SEC allocate those costs to the data centers that require those transmission lines. Ultimately, the SEC ruling that they released and announced is going to be doing just that. And so, in fact, that is will be saving into the future Virginians hundreds of millions of dollars in potential costs related to transmission infrastructure. So getting back to this case, certainly while I have submitted comments before, and as I have seen it, those comments have at least been part of the discussion because I've been quite pleased with the outcomes of that last SEC ruling. In this circumstance, I want to be able to be in every conversation, read every document, and it be a part of the case. So that as I am advocating for the things that I know matter to Virginians, principally the affordability of their electric bill, that I can advocate aggressively, not just as governor, but as someone who has the ability to ask any question, and also importantly put forth any priority. Now that admittedly doesn't mean the SEC needs to weigh every single one of my priorities or take every single one of my suggestions, but it does mean that I will be a party to this case, and have all of the information and all of the questions that I have about the impact on Virginians answered.
NBC4.
Thanks, Jack. Governor, thanks for taking the questions. The chair of the SEC is a former senior attorney at NextEra. Should she recuse herself from this process, or is this a conflict of interest in your opinion?
So that is something that I'm aware of the discussions related to her prior work experience. And this gets into, I will say, kind of the very specificity of the types of decisions here. I think it is incumbent upon any SEC commissioner to make a choice to potentially recuse themselves when there may be a conflict of interest. But I also think that it is extraordinarily important that we have SEC commissioners, as we do, who have broad and very, very deep expertise on the issues at hand. And so I think there is a bit of a question and a bit of a balance in this circumstance, which is that we have a commissioner who is talented, detailed, and has, as an observer, as I have been of the SEC's work, a deep amount of knowledge on every aspect of the regulatory decisions before the SEC. And notably, in the case of something as specialized as the work that an SEC commissioner does, some of that does come from their prior work experience. So this is where I would ultimately rely on the assessments of those who have an obligation and a duty to recognize any potential conflicts of interest that might exist. But then notably, actually, as a party to this case, when I do have greater access to all of the full filings, if anything in that observation, based on information that I come across through, diving much, much deeper into the details of what has been filed, or the actions of the SEC, in the event that that observation or that opinion changes, it's certainly one that I will be willing to make public. But at this point in time, I think I am relying on the professionalism and the deep experience that exists within the SEC commissioners. But importantly, the SEC is staffed by hundreds of experts who do so much of the work that goes into the final decision making.
EBC 13 Lynchburg.
Hi, Governor. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today. How will the SEC's decision to follow through on your request from July 9th impact families across the state? And do you know of any other happenings with data centers, things in the works to keep the cost from ending up on Virginia families?
Well, thank you for this question. So this gets at the question or the comment that I have made, as I've mentioned, transmission cost allocation. And so the question that was before the SEC is how does the SEC assign the cost of transmission line infrastructure? So when a new transmission line is required, who bears the cost of that? And importantly, as you note, I put forth comments very explicitly requesting that the allocation of the cost of that transmission line be allocated towards the data centers that ultimately are the ones requiring the build out of that transmission line. There was also another piece, a little bit more kind of wonkier in the details, which is that the kayak, so it's basically the upfront costs of building out transmission lines, that also be allocated to the data centers and not to a broader base of customers, not the ones who are requiring the build out of those transmission lines. And so ultimately into the future, the comments that we filed and ultimately the SEC's ruling that is allocating those transmission costs specifically to the data centers and not to other customers, other Virginians, residential homes and small business owners and everybody else, that will ultimately result in savings across the board of hundreds of millions of dollars across Virginia. This is in addition to the first of its kind energy consumption tax that Virginia implemented with the budget that I signed in the end of June. And we are looking towards the future of other ways that we can ensure that Virginia is maximizing our energy grid, ensuring that we are generating as much clean and renewable and frankly, which means reliable and affordable energy here in the Commonwealth, and ultimately that we continue to work to lower costs for Virginians, specifically when it comes to their electric bill. Actually, one more thing I would add is we just put in place also with the legislation I signed at the end of June to put on people's bills into the future a RGGI credit. So I made the decision for us to rejoin RGGI, which is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. That is our membership under the Northam administration meant hundreds of millions of dollars coming back to Virginia for resiliency, particularly flood resiliency and flood mitigation investments. And my predecessor unfortunately unfortunately took us out of RGGI. I put us back in RGGI. So in addition to allocating into the future hundreds of millions of dollars towards flood mitigation and other resilience efforts across the Commonwealth, we also are initiating a RGGI refund, which people will see in their electric bills next year.
BPM, Patrick Larson.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for taking some time. So the utilities have put forward a series of guarantees in their proposal, including bill credits, job protection, increased charitable giving, all things like that, all of which are time limited. Are those sufficient proposals to you, or are there any other specific items you'd be hoping to see?
So they're not sufficient yet, which is one of the reasons why I've chosen to intervene in the case, because I need a lot more details. Notably, you mentioned the bill credits. So the estimates are about $10 per ratepayer on their bills over 2 years. Well, that doesn't speak to where their bills might go, right? I want to make sure that, if there is promise of credits, that it's promise of credits on a bill that isn't also simultaneously perhaps increasing in other ways. I also think that the benefits of this merger will last for far longer for the companies participating than 2 years. And so I'd want to see the benefit to Virginians last longer as well. In its mission statement, the SEC explicitly it has a mission defined to balance the needs of customers and businesses and citizens. And I think, as I mentioned in my op-ed, if there is the potential that 2 large businesses are going to benefit financially, so too should everyday Virginians, particularly when they get their electric bill in the mailbox. In terms of job protections, importantly, there were discussions, in the filing, it explicitly talks about 18 months worth of job protections, 2 years worth of salary. But NextEra is also asserting that they intend to create a second headquarters. Now, a second headquarters to me would mean that there would be a substantial number of employees potentially employed at the current Dominion headquarters in Richmond or elsewhere across the state, where, of course, we have thousands of Dominion employees working in every corner of our Commonwealth in a whole variety of roles and jobs. And so I want to ensure that we're not just talking about short-term stability or short-term, in some cases, gain for Virginians, but in fact that the long-term benefits, if there are to be long-term benefits for the companies joining together in this merger, then I want to ensure that there are long-term benefits for Virginians and for Virginia.
Associated Press, Sarah Rankin.
Hi, Governor. Thank you. Can you address your thinking on whether or not you plan to call a special session on this issue? Some lawmakers want to consider legislation to extend the SEC's timeline for review. Would you support that, and will you call one?
So notably in some of my conversations with legislators, the discussion about whether to call a special session, or more importantly, I think more specifically, whether to extend the SEC timeline is based on a very understandable, because I maintain it as well, concern about what is going to go into the decision that this SEC will be making as it relates to this merger. And so for me, my priority is not drawing out a time frame wherein I have no ability to impact an outcome or provide feedback or ask questions. My priority is in ensuring that I can be a part of that conversation, which is why I'm taking the step of intervening. I think notably, and there was a concern, and I certainly shared it, that initially, of course, there are 3 states that are principally impacted: Virginia, where Dominion's headquartered; South Carolina, where they have a substantial number of customers; and then North Carolina to a much lesser degree because they have a much smaller customer base there. Importantly, initially, it was going to be the case that Virginia's SEC was going to make a decision earlier than the regulatory body in South Carolina. South Carolina's regulatory body just announced that they too will be making their decision in January. So that does mirror our time frame. And so for me, what is most important is that there is ample information, ample questions, ample time to view and review everything that is put before the SCC. And currently, what I have heard from the SCC is that at this moment in time, it appears that there is sufficient time for them to be able to review everything. And so, certainly things are subject to change in the future. But at this moment in time, and certainly once I'm a party to the case, I'll have a clearer view of all that is at play and all of the information that is fully available for review. But my priority is not extending a discussion, it is having a deep, purposeful, very detailed discussion about the potential outcomes of this merger.
Purple News, Elizabeth Byer.
My question has been asked. Thank you.
Washington Post, Liam Bowman.
Hi, Governor. Thank you. So my question is, I was wondering, could you talk a bit about what basis do SEC commissioners use to reach a conclusion? And second part, if the commissioners ultimately approve a deal that you believe is detrimental to the state, are there legal options available, and would you take further steps?
So the sort of short answer to the last part is, as a party to the case, as I will be, because I'm intervening in the case, I do have the ability to take legal action once there's a decision made. There's a number of other sort of steps and gates in there, but kind of as a broad overview, I'll let the attorney sort of asterisk the gating procedures to make sure that you'd have to weigh in before the decision is final in order to be able to actually have additional legal recourse. But the first step in that potential down the line is being a party to the case. My goal and my expectation by intervening in this SEC case is to be able to insert the priorities of Virginians throughout the discussion to make sure that the SEC is weighing the priorities that I know so many Virginians share, principally affordability, but also the protection of jobs and, frankly, a large employer that has long been a strong source of family-sustaining good jobs across our Commonwealth. And then importantly, the infrastructure investments we have made in our Commonwealth in renewable energy projects, particularly our offshore wind, that are already reaping benefits, not just for Virginia ratepayers, but also for our economy in terms of in the example of offshore wind, we are building up a real industry in the Hampton Roads area because we are building up an expertise in how it is that we create large scale and manage and the electrical and utility scale engagement that's necessary to manage an offshore wind project of that size. So we are building up that expertise that is meant to further propel Virginia's economy, but principally their regional economy, and ensuring that beyond just looking out for particular jobs, recognizing the types of economic benefits we get from investments in renewable energy. It is yet another reason why that's the sort of third pillar of my priorities. And so I say all that because I can't predict what the SEC is going to do, but I know very well all of the information and specific priorities that I intend to put forth. And I anticipate that as I get questions answered back to me and as I participate in this process, I will put forth, even more specific priorities or manifestations of what I want to see in order to fulfill kind of the priorities of those three pillars. So I can't predict full outcomes, but I can say with certainty that I will be heavily involved the entire process, which means I hopefully will be in a position to not be surprised by the time the SEC is moving to its final decision.